As I grew up, I wasn't really a socialite, and even to this day, most people might consider me quite antisocial overall. I was never sure why, but I've always been like this. Sometimes I feel lonely, but I still prefer to be alone. During college, I mostly kept to myself. I had a few friends, but I wasn't particularly close to anyone there. One day during lunch break, after getting my food and finding a table to sit at, I started feeling awkward, more awkward than usual during lunchtime. I was used to not sitting with anyone, but I'd been sitting at this table for 5 minutes, and I was the only one at the table. My social anxiety kicked in, so I tried to quickly finish my food so I could go back to my dorm. I felt strange, as if someone was watching me. I turned around and behind me was a guy staring right at me. I gave him a confused look for a moment and then turned back. I finished my food, got up, and threw away my trash. I glanced to my right and scanned the cafeteria briefly, and there he was. The same guy who had been behind me staring at me again. He whispered something to the guy next to him, and they both stared at me with very angry expressions. What's going on? I thought to myself. I've never seen these two men before in my life, so I don't know what their problem is. I thought maybe he had an issue with me, or perhaps they were just laughing at me. I've been a victim of bullying my whole life, so forgive me if you think I'm paranoid. However, nothing happened except for me feeling very confused, but I tried not to dwell on it too much, and went back to my dorm. Later that night, as I lay awake in bed trying to sleep, I couldn't sleep at all, and I lay there for what felt like hours. I decided to get up and move around for a bit. My anxiety was getting worse, so I thought I should go sit outside for a while and get some fresh air. I found a bench that was on the far east side of campus that I'd never seen before. It was right under some trees just before the entrance that seemed to be a trail. After a few minutes of sitting there, I saw someone in the distance standing in front of the campus building under the yellow-colored light. It was quite dark outside, so it was a bit creepy. They just stared at me for a minute or two without moving at all. Then they started running towards me. I just sat there and didn't move. "What do you want?" I shouted as he got closer. I sat and started to back away a little. "Hey, chill, what's up?" I immediately realized it was the same guy who had been staring at me earlier in the cafeteria. He grabbed me by the shirt and punched me in the face at least 4 or 5 times, breaking my nose, and took my phone and wallet. He didn't say anything to me the whole time. Then he left, and after that I never saw him again, and the path was clear. I straightened myself up. I went back to my dorm and told my roommate everything that happened. I explained everything to him, and he said we should call campus security so we could involve the police. I said I wanted to wait until morning. I tried my best to describe the man who did this to me, but he didn't know at all who I was talking about. I spoke with the dean the next day and told him everything. He said he would look at the camera footage and get back to me as soon as possible. So I left his office and continued my day waiting to hear from him. When he finally got back to me, he said he saw me on the camera that night, but he said there was no one else outside with me the previous night and even accused me of lying. I was so confused. I tried to tell him I wasn't lying, but he kept cutting me off every time I spoke and threatened me with suspension for lying and wasting time. He showed me the video and explained to me that there was no one else outside the entire time I was outside. After a bit of arguing between us, I started to panic and ran back to my dorm. I gave my roommate an update on what happened that night between me and the dean, and I'm pretty sure he thought I was crazy, and I think everyone else did too. I really had a black eye and a broken nose and everything, but no one believed me at all. I really thought everyone thought I did this to myself or something. But the weirdest thing about this situation that still baffles me to this day is, like I said, I never saw that guy again. and no one knows who I'm talking about when I try to describe him. The friends I had cut ties with me because they thought I was seeking attention and weird or crazy. I've never been the same since that day. I don't know what to think about this situation at all, and I don't think I'll ever know. It was my first year in high school, and it was just another regular school day. As I walked towards my third class, the principal announced through the loudspeaker that there was an emergency situation and that we needed to immediately lock down. I started to panic a little because it was still quite a distance to the next class, and I was running late, so I almost ran to the restroom, but I thought going to the library just a few extra steps down the hallway would be a safer option that I was willing to take. It was the beginning of the year, so it was impossible for me to know if this was a real lockdown or just a drill, but usually, we do drills before the real thing, and usually they inform us beforehand, so I had a bad feeling if I went to the restroom, most likely, I would be alone, and anyone could enter any time, so there's someone dangerous lurking around here. The only thing stopping them from getting to me would be the locked door. I hoped the library door wasn't locked when I got there. Now either a full class, or at least one person would be in there. Thankfully it wasn't locked, but there was no one there. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared. I took out my phone and checked the weather app to see if the lockdown could be related to the weather, but it wasn't. I sat there for a few moments just waiting for the loudspeaker to go silent and the principal to announce that the drill was over. Suddenly, I heard footsteps from the end of the hallway moving slowly towards me. I heard the library door open, and that's when my stomach started to feel uneasy. I trembled with anxiety, but I couldn't help but peek from behind the bookshelf where I was hiding. It was an old man with a creepy appearance in his late 40s. He quickly checked the entire area. It turns out he was on medication, and he was the parent of a child who goes to school here. It seems his child has been harassed by the same kids for years. And it seems he and his family have made endless complaints, but the district has never done anything. The only thing they seem to do is repeatedly warn the bullies. And of course, with the child constantly nagging at the bullies, it makes the harassment much worse, to the point where the child tried to commit suicide several times. As soon as I saw this man, I knew something was wrong. Who is this stranger, and is he armed? What is he doing? What does he want? Am I going to get hurt? All of this was swirling in my head. I knew it was something bad because no one should be wandering around during a lockdown. I didn't know at the time what he was doing there, but I could guess that the lockdown was real, just from the way he was wandering around and even from his appearance. Also, I'd never seen him before, which was also a red flag because I almost know every teacher here, and he definitely didn't look like a teacher. I could sense he didn't bring any good. No, he's the reason we're on lockdown. Thankfully, he didn't see me, and he left the library after searching for a bit, too. The police apprehended him just a few minutes later. Turns out he was apprehended with a dagger knife and some sort of pills. Now, I don't know if this part is true, but it said that he told the police he was going to attack the kids who had been bullying his child all year. I guess he had enough with his bullied child, but wait, that's not the right way to deal with something like that. I feel sorry for the child who has been bullied all these years, but I'm glad the man was caught before something terrible happened. Someone who would do something as bizarre as that is definitely unpredictable, I'm sure, and they can do almost anything. So I'm glad he didn't see me in the library. School should make you feel safe, but that was definitely the most intense and frightening thing that ever happened in my life. One day when I was in school, I think it was my sophomore year, I was sitting in class with my friend Josh. Josh texted me and asked if I wanted to hang out after school. I said yes, and then I had to talk to my mom first. So the plan was that we would just hang out at the nearby park until our other friend Carson finished soccer practice. Then we would all walk to a nearby restaurant in the downtown area, less than a mile from the park. Josh and I were bored and messing around at the park while waiting for Carson to finish practice. We started playing basketball, just shooting and warming up because we were going to play one-on-one against each other. Suddenly, an unknown old man started walking towards us. This guy was probably around 30 years old, and I immediately wondered in my mind what he wanted, because we were only 15 years old and he was a stranger. So of course at first I was a little scared and nervous. He started talking to us and he said that he used to be a basketball coach for a high school team in some city far away from us. He asked what we were doing and I told him that we were going to play a game while waiting for our friend. He wasn't weird at first. He started shooting with us and making jokes. Okay, he's not so bad, I thought. He's just a random dad who's probably bored. Nothing bad. Just a few moments later, my friend had to leave because his mom called him. And it turned out he was in trouble for something that happened at school. And it turned out he wasn't even supposed to be hanging out with me. So he left. It was just me and this guy. He told me his name was Matthew, but I later found out that wasn't true. I started to get nervous when my friend left. Almost right after he left, Matthew asked a strange question. Hey, how about we go to my house? You and my son will get along. I have a basketball hoop and we can all play. I'm parked there and I live just a few minutes away. He said, and trust me, he showed me that creepy looking old white van. Yes, he really did have a creepy old van. That's when I knew for sure that something was wrong. I told him no, and maybe another time because I was waiting for my friend. He insisted. Why don't you hang out with him later? You remind me so much of my son and he really needs a cool friend like you, he said. He then laughed very strangely and gave the creepiest smile ever. I said no to him and started running and screaming for help. It attracted a lot of attention and some adults quickly rushed towards me. It was a family having a picnic with their 2 young children who were much younger than me. The man who claimed to be named Matthew ran to his car and sped away quickly before they could get a good look at his license plate. They potentially saved my life, and I am forever grateful for that. Luckily, I was not naive, and there were also people around. Good people who helped me. The husband of the woman who was with me called the police when I told him what happened, and the woman helped me calm down and called my mother. I called my mother and she rushed to me immediately from work. My mother and I went home after talking to the police. I gave the officer every detail I could possibly think of about what happened and what he looked like. A few months later, the man was on the news for over 5 separate kidnappings that all happened within 2 years. Apparently he really did kidnap boys and girls and lock them in his basement. I will not go into details. Just know that it was very horrific and twisted. I still think about it every day. Some days it consumes me, and I have nightmares about him almost every night. He is in prison now, and he will be there for a very long time. I can't believe there are people out there who are so sick.